This show is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Without a healthy mind, being happy is hard. Visit betterhelp.com/kindafunny and see if online therapy is for you.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Kinda Funny Xcast, your home for all things Xbox here at Kinda Funny. Of course, I'm one of your hosts, Snowbike Mike, and I am joined by my two favorite people on planet Earth. Every time that intro song kicks off, I smile because I think to myself, man, this is really real. We get to do a podcast all about Xbox here at Kinda Funny, and I get to hang out with the two coolest dudes on planet Earth, and that is Paris Lilly and Gary Whitta. Paris, how are you doing? Nice to see you back again.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Little under the weather. I got a good old fashioned cold, so it's starting to get over that. But no, I'm doing good. Kind of just laid low this week. Sorry I missed last week. Kind of had some real life stuff pop up last minute, so I was unable to attend. Wish I could have been in on a discussion talking about some of the superhero game stuff. But other than that, excited to be back, and let's talk some games.
Paris, I need you to give me one Marvel game, one developer.
One Marvel game, one developer. I always go back to the Coalition when I think about Xbox and making a game, and I want a Magneto game. I want a game featuring Magneto. That's what I want.
Wow. Okay, Paris. Well, let's do a follow-up. We'll give you a question with a part B.
Yeah.
Does Microsoft and Team Xbox need a superhero game, in your opinion?
Absolutely not. And that's why I wish I was in the conversation last week, because no one was talking about this at all until they saw Wolverine on screen during that PlayStation showcase. No one was screaming for a superhero game from Xbox. So why should that change now, right? I look at it more this way. I was excited during that PlayStation showcase because it was Insomniac making it. And I know I can trust them because they now have a track record, right? We've not seen, I'm sure eventually, Microsoft will get something. I mean, we know they're doing Indiana Jones, but, there's no proven track record within these studios handling those kind of licensed games. And, until Batman Arkham came around, a lot of those games were flops. So, I don't need this flood of superhero games to all of a sudden come in, to justify a gaming experience. If anything, what Microsoft is doing, trying to create these brand new IPs and experiences, that's the right thing to do. Like, look, as an example, Deathloop, we've all been playing that recently. Give me more of that. I want more of that kind of stuff versus worrying about getting a licensed superhero game.
No doubt. Give me more of that Deathloop action is right. Gary Whitta, it's nice to see you as well. How are you doing today? You cleaned out the house. Everybody wants to know in the comments, what did you do with those Xboxes?
Oh my God, what a hassle. Don't get me started on that. I did trade them in.
Okay.
GameStop gave me $200 a piece for them, which I thought was quite generous. They gave me a choice: $200 in cash for each, or $250 in GameStop store credit.
That's how they get you.
I took the cash.
Took the cash? Wow.
Yeah, because I don't go to GameStop anymore. What am I going to get from GameStop?
It's $600.
I buy all my games
in
digitally
cash
now. I don't go. Like I couldn't. Like I was thinking as I was there, like, when was the last time I was in a GameStop, and when's the next time gonna be? If I'm ordering a piece of console hardware, I'll get it online. I don't want to have to fight the crowds again, especially in the COVID era. I buy pretty much all my games digitally. I can't remember the last time I bought a game in a box. So I just kind of felt like the GameStop credit would be. I honestly had no idea what I would do with it. So
what would
I
do with
$750
of fake GameStop money, fake GameStop money. Gary?
Yeah, I wouldn't know. Yeah, so yeah, it's
Exactly.
It's like Disney dollars. What am I going to do with it? So I took it was quite the process. First of all, it was slight. I don't want to like drag down the podcast here, but since you asked,
yeah, I got to know.
It was a bit annoying because it turns out that they will only take one console at a time at each store. So I had to go to two different GameStops, one to get rid of the one Xbox and then a different one to get rid of the other. And then there is this part I do understand. There is quite an exhaustive process they have to go through to test the box to make sure that it's, it is what it is, and it's not, an Xbox case stuffed full of newspaper or whatever. They boot it up, they check the network connection, they put a game disc in it to make sure it plays. They have a little kind of miniature HDMI handheld monitor kind of thing they can plug it into just to kind of run it through all the basics. I then had to go back to the store again. So I go back home again because they said, oh, well, only to accept it for trade-in if it has all the gubbins that, you need. We need a controller, we need an HDMI cable and a power cable. I just had the console. So I had to go grab all of that stuff, and it was a big old hassle. But you know what? Now I got $400 in crisp $100 bills in my pocket. I'm holding, folding, as we like to say. And who knows what I'll do with that little windfall. But yeah, if you've got like an old Xbox sitting around on the top of your shelf as I did for the longest time, that's, as it turns out, might be worth some real money for exactly the reason, Mike, that we talked about last week on the show, with all the supply issues with, you can't get a current generation console. Microsoft has discontinued the last gen, the One X. So there's nothing. If you go to like pretty much any store these days looking for brand new Xbox hardware, whether it be last generation or new generation, the cupboard is bare. So it's a seller's market in the used console business right now. And yeah, Uncle Gary cashed in.
That's my guy, Gary. Well, I like to know that you're holding and folding those $100 bills in your back pockets. For a little fun icebreaker, let's circle back. Our guy, Paris Lilly, he's sick right now. And it's a perfect question to say, hey, what do you two like to do when you're sick? What's that go-to game? Or do you two like to just lounge on the couch, watch football, watch TV shows and movies? What do you really like? So I'll kick it to who's sick right now, Mr. Paris Lilly. Paris, when you're sick and you're down and out, what's your go-to? What's your thing?
I usually watch a lot of TV. I'll watch a lot of documentaries or try and catch some old movies. Now, just during this particular week, since I've been sick and it's just been top of mind, I've gone back and watched all the Matrix stuff. That's what I did. Okay. Obviously in anticipation of the new one coming out at the end of the year. And I also watched Cocaine Cowboys, that documentary. I'd never actually watched the 2006 version of it. I only watched, there's like a kind of a sequel to it that came some years later. And then there's that new Netflix series that is out, but I never watched the original one. Freaking wild, dude. It's insane. So if anybody wants to see how Miami was built in the late 70s and the early 80s on top of cocaine, go watch Cocaine Cowboys. It's insanity.
All right. I like that. Gary, what do you like to do when you're sick? What's your go-to?
I mean, first of all, I really like to make a meal of it. I think, there's flu, there's colds, and then there's the colds and flus that men get and how they respond to them. Like I just fold. I crash. I'm there tinkling my little bell, going, please bring me some chicken noodle soup or some orange juice. I need to be waited on hand and foot. I tend to be a big baby. I rarely get sick. I think I've got a pretty good immune system. I fight off most, low-grade cold. So anything that does get through my system is probably like a heavyweight, cold or flu, and it really does tend to knock me out. So in those cases, I'm certainly not playing video games because, who can focus on something that requires that kind of coordination when you're sick? The best I can maybe manage is like retreat to like comfort TV. I'll watch like old episodes of the Andy Griffith Show, or just something that's like easy to watch. Whatever the chicken noodle soup equivalent on television is, that's what I generally go to. Stuff that I've watched a million times before. When you just want something easy and just try to sleep it off and generally be a big baby about it, really.
Okay. You got to oversell the sicknesses, right, Gary? You got to fold like a lawn chair.
Got to make the best of it.
Really work that one in. My favorite go-to is actually Skyrim. I find that I love to get on the couch, get a big blanket and some pillows out, and it's just a massive, sprawling game. Nice, easy soundtrack as well. So I find that when I'm exploring through the forest and I'm just kind of zoning out to the soundtrack, I could close my eyes, press pause, come back to it, and nothing's missed. It's just a fun, epic adventure that I love whenever I'm sick. But let us know in the comments section down below, what's your go-to game or TV or movie that you love to watch and do while you're sick? Since our guy Paris Lilly, he's recovering, he's going to get better by the next week. But let's jump into it, guys. Of course, this is the Kind of Funny Xcast. We post each and every Saturday at 6 a.m. West Coast, Best Coast time on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, roosterteeth.com, and on podcast services around the globe. Make sure to please go on over and subscribe to our YouTube channels, youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, youtube.com/kindoffunny, and youtube.com/kindoffunnyplays. It would mean the world to us continue to see growth and love over on our YouTube channels. We'd like to give a big thank you to the people who support us over on Patreon. The month of September, we got the Patreon producers of Tyler Ross, the Kind of Funny Destiny 2 PC Clan, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, Alex J. Sandoval, Techie Haas, James Hastings, Casey Andrew, Elliot, and Brian Ward. Thank you all so much for supporting us on Patreon and being Patreon producers of the show. This week, the Kind of Funny Xcast is brought to you by HelloFresh, Native, and Chime, but the team will tell you all about that in a little bit. Let's jump right into it, guys. We got a pretty slow week, a nice week, a calm week, some would say, and that's a really positive thing because we got some smaller news stories that we're going to talk about, we're going to get through, and then on the back half of the show, I got a fun question, a more get-to-know-you section of the podcast. So let's jump right into it. We got a cool little update coming on over to the Xbox app on PC. So Xbox players with Windows 10 PCs can now play games from the cloud via the Xbox app on PC with Xbox Game Pass and stream games from their Xbox consoles with Xbox Remote Play. So a nice little upgrade to the Xbox app on PC. Paris, I'll kick it to you first because I know you have real-time tested this. What was it like jumping into Remote Play via your console?
You know what? Excuse me. It actually worked pretty well. And the way it is, I did it through on my laptop on Windows 10 through the Xbox app, and you just click on that console icon, and then it basically, if you have your console registered in already, it'll identify it. Console's in standby mode, and it'll bring up your entire Xbox dashboard. Turn on your controller, and you're literally controlling it was my Series X dashboard. I was able to launch into like Psychonauts 2, be able to play it. Visuals, there wasn't a lot of artifacting, or the latency really wasn't there. And obviously I'm on my home network, so I wasn't expecting too much, but it was for the most part, pretty smooth experience, very playable. I do want to, here in the next day or two, go out, use my 5G connection, see how it works, going over a cell connection just to see what the difference looks like. But it definitely works. And I think the cool thing about it is it doesn't turn your console on. So I went out and looked, my console was still off. Like, it didn't power anything on, lights weren't on, anything, but I was on my console playing the games that were on my console, and it worked just fine. So yeah, like I said, pretty cool experience. Nice that it gives you access to the games that you have downloaded on your system. So it gives you another option outside of the regular cloud gaming, with Project X Cloud, which is tied into your Game Pass stuff. Because as an example, Death's Door, that's another one I played, which is not on Game Pass. And I was able to play that through the Xbox app on my Windows 10 PC.
That's really cool to hear, Paris. I'm glad that was working so well for you. I know that was a big one when you, I, and Gary were talking about the kind of rise of Xbox Game Pass and xCloud, and what would this be like streaming from the cloud. And a lot of people were in the comments saying, hey, have you ever tried Remote Play, right? You have your games right there that you have downloaded. Have you ever tried that? It's a lot of fun. It's really cool. And I love having those games that aren't on Game Pass now available to play. The only issue for me is my PC is about 2 feet away from the console. So I don't really get that kind of experience. But of course, if you have the laptop, if you're on the go, it's a really cool one to be able to mirror that system onto a PC and or laptop. Gary, of course, I got to make sure I hear from your opinion. What do you think about the little upgrade that we see right here?
Yeah, this came up when I was on Games Daily this week. It was the story that popped that day, so I had a chance to kind of think about it. My question to Greg, and I've thought about it a little bit since then. I guess I still kind of have I kind of see it, but I still have a couple of questions about it. It's very cool, especially what Paris said, like the console's not even on, but you basically, are having a console experience on, your laptop or whatever it is you've got. So, as a piece of as a flex, like, hey, this is something you can do. It's cool. I am trying to figure out what the practical use case really is. Like, the best I can think of, in Paris, maybe you can help me because you've tried it out already, is like, you want to play a game on your living room Xbox, but maybe some other family members are using the TV that it's connected to. So you take your laptop or you go to wherever your PC is, another room, and you play your Xbox games on there. Is that like that I feel like is the only practical way I could think this would actually be useful. But that would be useful.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best use case, exactly what you're saying. Whereas if the normal TVs where the consoles are connected to are being used, and you just want to come in and play whatever you're going to play, it just gives you the option. It's another option to be able to do it. That's why I am curious to see how it works outside of the house, as far as just the latency and everything goes, compared to what you would get if you're doing Project X Cloud. because I think for people that don't subscribe to Game Pass or have Game Pass Ultimate, this is going to be their option to have some type of remote play, because now they can connect back into their house and play the games that are on their console. But bandwidth is going to be the biggest limiting factor here. Like, I'm fortunate enough I have a gig connection, great upload speed, but if you don't have great upload speed coming out of your house to wherever you are, I doubt it's going to be that great of an experience, because you're going to run into a lot of lag. But we'll see. I always say with this cloud gaming stuff and the remote play and everything, yes, it technically works today. The technology is there. We can do all this today, but it's still very early days. This entire technology is still going to have a while to mature to really get to where, not that it's ever going to replace console gaming or being, with actual hardware, local hardware in your house, but be good enough that it's at least playable, whether it's, you're connecting to a data center or you're connecting something to your house. But like I said before, the biggest thing is going to be bandwidth. And I think as 5G gets rolled out more, that'll make it more practical.
Very cool. I want to give a quick shout out this week. Me and the team, we had a sponsorship deal with Amazon and Amazon Luna. We got to show off Luna Couch, one of their new features coming over to that streaming service. And what really blew me away is Luna Couch promotes that you can invite up to 5 of your friends to play with you. But we were playing local multiplayer and co-op games, which was really cool. So like a game like Moving Out, one of my favorite games from last year that doesn't have online multiplayer. It was really cool that we were all in separate locations around the globe. We were able to play this local multiplayer game together. It ran really smooth, and it was a really cool idea of like, it somehow turned that into a local multiplayer experience, which I really, really love. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to that as we're talking about cloud and all of that jazz moving forward. I hope to see more of that implemented over here as well. But let's keep it going.
By the way, Mike, it's actually a really cool hidden feature that I learned about Steam recently. Steam has a similar thing called Remote Play, where a friend of mine we were playing Streets of Rage 2 on some retro arcade collection that was available on Steam. It doesn't support 2-player online play, only local, but with Steam Remote Play, you can basically stream the entire game to someone else's PC and play it as just like you said with Luna Couch, play local couch games over the internet, and it's great. I love that. Anything that makes it easier for us to come together, because especially like who's sitting on your couch these days? Nobody, right? You're not having anyone over at your house because they might be sick. Can't have that. So you stay over there and we'll remote play it. We'll Luna Couch it, whatever you want to call it. There's going to be more and more need, I think, for these kind of technologies as we're increasingly kind of physically distanced from one another.
I really want to remote play NBA Street Volume 2 with you, Gary.
Oh my God.
One day we'll be able to do that. That will be the dream, but let's keep it moving because I will get you started if we keep talking about it. Here's an update for you. All those Halo fans out there, we have a Halo Master Chief update that you need to know about. The Master Chief Collection. Season 8 is on the way, and Barrett is going to show off some really cool skins and helmets and cosmetics while I talk about this. But Season 8 is on its way for Master Chief Collection, and it's bringing a whole lot of awesome stuff, but it will be the last official update of the calendar year, and it will actually be the last official seasonal update for your Halo Master Chief Collection. The team over at 343 are talking about how they will balance, of course, Halo Infinite and Halo Master Chief Collection, 2 live service experiences moving forward, and they want to ensure that Halo Infinite is perfect and awesome going forward. So they're going to put a lot of time and resources into that. You still will see updates coming to Halo Master Chief Collection, but not in the same vein of these large seasonal updates that you need to know about, that you need to be a part of. They're going to put out updates when they're ready. But there's 2 things to this, guys. We'll talk about the seasonal updates and the balance, but I wanted to show off this awesome gear, these cosmetics coming right now. Of course, if you're an audio listener, these are some helmets for your Spartans that you've never before seen in the Halo universe. They're really badass. They look like gladiator helmets, actually, kind of some Roman Coliseum stuff right here. And I really love what they're doing with Season 8, titled Mythic. And you can see it on your screen if you watch it on YouTube, these really badass helmets. Now, Paris, I'll kick it to you first. What do you think about these on the screen right now? Are these something we'll see in Halo Infinite? Is this going to be a new normal of going above and beyond with the cosmetics, or do you think we'll still stay in that kind of Halo universe lore area?
I think they're going to have to start going above and beyond, especially with Infinite's multiplayer being free to play, and the revenue stream is obviously going to be tied to that battle pass. So you're going to want to give people an incentive to want to jump into that battle pass and earn some of these unique cosmetic items, so to speak, right? So yeah, I think we will see, and we already got a hint of that when we saw the multiplayer trailer during the showcase, where we saw the samurai helmet, right? So I'm thinking we'll absolutely see some really unique out there kind of things, to where when you see someone, when you're playing Halo Infinite multiplayer, you're like, oh man, he got that. How did he get that? Oh, it's part of this. All right, I got to go do that because I want to go get that too, kind of thing.
Gary Whitta, you're a man that balances a lot in life. You have a lot of things you always juggle, a lot of work that you have to get done. What do you think about the 343 team kind of moving a lot of priority towards Halo Infinite and putting these larger seasonal updates on the back burner for Master Chief Collection?
I mean, I think it makes total sense. They have to, obviously prioritize the big stuff going forward, and Master Chief Collection has been, a great gift to Halo fans for years now, and I think will continue to be so. But there's only so many hours in the day, and only so many people at 343, and obviously the priority is going to be on growing Infinite going forward. And I imagine in at some point in the kind of middle to distant future, even Infinite will get rolled into Master Chief Collection, and the next big thing will come along, right? Everything, Master Chief Collection kind of becomes the umbrella that covers the everything that's happening in the Halo games universe. On those helmets as well, by the way, because I want to show you, I love chumming in on Halo because I don't know anything about Halo compared to you two. I'm like the guy that doesn't know anything but is going to say something anyway. I want to say I particularly like the one that looks like Cobra Commander with the kind of the shiny mirrored faceplate. I want that helmet. Just as a general point, it's interesting that they're doing this. I think it's reflective of what I'm taking from this is they feel the need to kind of keep up with what are the big popular trends in the shooter market right now, which is microtransactions, cosmetics. I read something recently, Call of Duty Warzone, which is a free-to-play game, makes $1.5 billion a year, and that's all cosmetics and microtransactions and people who want the latest skins and they want their character to look as cool as possible. And I've always kind of felt that that's something where Halo has not really been able to dabble into that world, right? Because everyone just typically plays in, the very iconic Spartan Master Chief type armor. We all know what those characters look like, but everyone basically kind of looks the same. Oh, there's a red version, there's a blue version, there's a green version. It looks like, even though some of these characters look like nothing like characters from Halo, also like a plague doctor and some, like you said, things that look like from Gladiator and, kind of Greek warriors and, taking from all these kind of different historical aesthetics. I think that's really interesting. So it looks less like Halo, but I'm sure at a high level, as they're thinking about how are we going to monetize Infinite and the Halo universe going forward, they're looking at what Warzone's doing. They're looking at what Apex and these other free-to-play games that are making big money in the microtransaction market. I'm thinking we got to get on this train if we're going to be viable going forward. We're making the game free-to-play multiplayer. How do we monetize this thing? It's clear there's big money in outlandish cosmetics. We've got to bring that into the Halo universe, and I think that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, Paris, you and Gary both, I want to hear your thoughts on this because it's really exciting to hear and to see what we'll see from 343 Industries when it comes to the free-to-play aspects and then monetization, right? We're coming hot off of Fortnite. We're coming hot off of Call of Duty Warzone, where it is, hey, we're dropping skins on the regular, whether that be weapon skins, whether that be your character skins, and we've seen outlandish stuff. We've seen more in the pocket, in the bag of certain characters in that kind of world. What do you expect from Halo? Do we expect to see a gigantic store that's updated daily, weekly, with monetization factors anywhere from $5 to $20? Or do you think they might play this a little bit differently and try to keep in the good graces of the player base and not have really heavily monetized cosmetics? What do you think on that?
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty thin line there in what you're saying, because I completely agree with everything that Gary's talking about, because you have to monetize this. That's the whole point. So how are you going to monetize it? It's going to be that battle pass. You got to give people an incentive to go to the battle pass. It's going to be the really cool cosmetic items are not going to be in the free tier. It's not going to happen. They got to give you a reason to want to go spend your money. And it's going to be the really cool cosmetic items that are going to be tied into that battle pass. But at the same time, you don't want to overdo it. Being a heavy Destiny player, Bungie ran into that problem some years back, where just too many of the cool stuff was going into Eververse versus being able to just earn it naturally in the world. Clearly, Fortnite seems to have balanced this in a really good way. But then I do question that. It seems like my kids always asking me for money to buy something out of there. So clearly, it's working. So we'll see. My guess would be early on. I wouldn't imagine that they're going to overdo it with that, because you obviously want to establish the player base. You want to get people in there liking the game and liking playing it and feeling comfortable about it. You don't want to beat them over like you're nickel and diming them for every cosmetic item that they can potentially get. So I would say at least early on, no. Obviously, right now the priority is just getting the game launched and getting it right versus worrying so much about the cosmetic items. But I could see a point in time down the road where you're really going to see a more heavy emphasis on cosmetic items that are going to be microtransactions to purchase, because that's going to be the revenue model. It just makes sense, right? Side note on that, just thinking about what Gary was saying about Infinite one day going into the Master Chief Collection. I was just thinking there was a news item I'm pretty sure I saw where they said that Halo 5 is not going to come to PC. And obviously, it's not a part of the Master Chief Collection as well. So I actually was pretty surprised by that, because you figure at some point they would roll all that stuff into just one place where everyone know they could get all their Halo content. So I'm actually surprised. But yeah, sticking on the main topic, I don't think anytime soon with overdoing it for cosmetic items.
It's funny, Paris, you say like don't overdo it, because I'm looking at that first batch of aesthetics. You don't think that's overdoing it, because they're pretty wacky. I mean, I don't mean overdoing it in terms of like bringing out a million cosmetics all at once.
Yeah.
In terms of an aesthetic departure from the Halo that we know, like if you showed me those cosmetics without telling me what game they're from, I would never have guessed Halo. They don't look like Halo at all. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, because again, that as iconic as the Master Chief Spartan style armor is, there's only so many like paint jobs based on that you can sell, right? People do want like stuff that looks different. So it's how can we bring like more outlandish exotic cosmetics into the game, but without it starting to look like something that isn't Halo anymore? Maybe that's the balance they've got to find.
Yeah, and I guess to be clear on what I was saying is, I'm thinking overdoing it by taking all the really wacky, outlandish stuff and just putting them into the paid tier. I do think early on you're going to see more of a fair balance of, here's some cool stuff in the free tier, here's some cool stuff in the paid tier, so that for the people that don't want to commit to the battle pass early on, you do still feel like you're going to be able to make a unique Spartan that sticks out from the crowd, so to speak, right?
Do you like, in terms of like overdoing it in terms of the aesthetic, do you like those designs, like the Plague Doctor and the Roman, and like I saw that one that looked like kind of the Maximus, gladiator mask from Gladiator. It's really, really cool that it looks beautiful. But it doesn't look like Halo to me, and I'm wondering if Halo fans are going to consider that a good or a bad thing, like a very radical departure from the skins and the armor they're used to playing with.
Well, I'm kind of a yes and no. I'll say, as an old man, no. I just give me my blue or red Spartan, I'll go play. But I understand that my kids are going to be excited about that stuff, because I just see how when they're playing Fortnite, or they're playing, my son playing Warzone or something like that, they want to stick out from the crowd. They want that cool stuff because they want to look unique and different. So maybe I probably could care less, but I definitely think there's people that see that and it excites them, because they're not tied to the legacy of Halo, right? Like I would be from 20 years ago. They're just playing new games now. So give them another cool game to play. Let them express themselves in their own unique way of how their Spartan looks, and they just go from there.
I'm really excited. I hope they do go wild like that. I love what they did with that Season 8 gear, and I hope that they do that, because I want to make my Spartan unique, like we've talked about, right? The Spartan is you. And I do want to go wild, because this is going to be a game that will live on for quite some time, and we're going to need to probably get wacky and wild to continue to get into the wallets of the player base. Because now what I think about is that somebody who is constantly playing live service games, buying battle passes, being in that heavily monetized space of Call of Duties, Apexes, and Fortnites, I'm really interested to see what this live service team does on how do you make that battle pass worth the buy every single season. Because we've seen in certain games, as they've gone on and you've had 6 to 8 battle passes, you've noticed that the final tier on that battle pass is like this cool skin that it's all right, in my opinion, but things over in the store are way cooler for just $20, right? And it's going to be very interesting to find that balance of, do you put the biggest and the baddest at the end of that battle pass and hope everybody buys it and keeps playing it and works towards that? Or do we put some of the coolest skins over in this, hey, $5 to $20 category? And where's that balance going to be? It's going to be a tough one to find.
So I think one of the sorry, Paris, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, no, please go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the advantages I think that Microsoft has coming into this space relatively late with Halo. This is already now a fairly mature ecosystem that we're seeing, right? Free to play game, but then, we get you on the back end with all the cosmetics because, you want to look cool. Again, whether it be Apex, whether it be Destiny, whether it be Fortnite, PUBG, Warzone, on and on it goes. There's so many different games selling different variations of season passes, different monetization models, selling cosmetics, selling skins, selling all kinds of different things. And no one game does it exactly the same as another. It's all largely the same model, but everyone's trying little variations. Some things succeed, some things fail. I think if anything, Microsoft has a little bit of an advantage in being able to, look at that vast wealth of data that's been accumulating now over the past couple of years. Well, Destiny tried this and it was popular, or Apex tried that and it was. Not that they just want to copy what other people have done, but but it's not like they're first out on the dance floor with trying to kind of sell cosmetics. This has been going on for a long time now, and if they're smart, they're looking at what's worked and what hasn't worked in a vast range of other games that utilize these season pass microtransaction models, and can apply that to how they want to do their own unique variation on it.
Yeah, and you actually kind of pretty much dived into what I was going to say as well. There's obviously a lot of lessons learned out there on what to do and what not to do. So like you're saying, Gary, I think it would behoove 343 to look at that and see, all right, we can try this early on. Let's experiment. Clearly listen to the community. Don't be tone deaf to what the community is telling you. If they're saying, hey, we want more of this, or we don't like that, obviously adjust accordingly.
It's so exciting to think about because you have vehicle skins, you have Spartan armors, you have Spartan colors, you have weapon colors. There's a lot, player tags, the service cards. There's a lot that will go into this that could and probably will be heavily monetized when you think about it moving forward. It's one of their first times a live service team jumping in to a true live service game like this, right? They've proven it, what they could do in Master Chief Collection. Now they're going to put it on the biggest, baddest stage with their brand new game. Be really interesting to see. And, playing all these games, I can tell you, I've stopped buying the Battle Pass for a number of these titles. I've skipped a number of them. So the microtransactions on the other side have just been more tantalizing. Cooler skins, better guns for a $20 purchase as opposed to a $15 Battle Pass where I have to work to get the top tier. So it'll be really interesting to see how they find that balance and what the player base really dictates on.
So let me stick on that for a second. I'm cheapskate. Yeah. I don't buy nothing. But it's curious that you say that. So you would rather say they charge you, all right, here for $20, I'm gonna give you this, and you just get it, versus spend the 15 and it's the battle pass, and playing through the battle pass, you quote unquote earn the items. So you would rather just do it that way. I just give you the money up front, give me what I want, and I keep playing the way I want.
I am a fan of that, and I think there's a weird 50-50 on that, right? Because on the battle pass, I get more bang for my buck, right? $15, I get 100 tiers of different items, right? But a lot of them won't speak to me, right? It'll be a character skin, a gun that I don't really care about. And then there will be certain items that I really care about. Maybe there's 4, maybe there's 5, maybe there's 20. And I'm hoping that there's more that will make me jump into that battle pass, as opposed to, hey, we'll use Warzone for the perfect example. Warzone sells Call of Duty packs that come with 5 to 7 items, and they are a more dialed in pack for you. They have a certain theme, they have a character skin, they have a gun, they have a death animation, and it's just easier to buy and really digest, as opposed to looking at the battle pass going, there's probably 10 out of the 100 that I really care for. And so, I prefer the, hey, you give me what I want for $5 to $20, and then I'm done. The battle pass, to me, if it's less than 10 to 20 items that I really care about, I don't really find the need for them sometimes. And I've skipped a lot of battle passes because of that.
No, that's interesting perspective, because like I said, I don't really buy anything, but it totally makes sense.
Oh, Paris, I'm buying a lot. Don't look at my credit card statements. My parents would kill me. Kind of funny doesn't like. I like to buy things. All right, don't look at it,
Mike,
y'all.
how do you eat?
But with that, let's keep it going because we got some more fun stuff going on right now. And another fun one that we got to talk about, Tokyo Game Show is coming up here at the end of the month. And here's the things you need to know about it. So tune in at 6 p.m. JST. And if you don't know what the heck time zone that is, I broke it down for you. That's 2 a.m. Pacific time on Thursday, September 30th for you. So you know the time frame to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Tokyo Game Show with a fun tagline of "We'll always have games." The Xbox event will be curated for their players in Japan and across Asia. From the Xbox Wire, here's what you can expect. Expect a celebration with our Asia community and locally relevant updates. Though no new global debuts should be expected, tune in to see the latest regionally relevant updates on previously announced games coming later this year. So there's your update for the Tokyo Game Show 25th anniversary. Always a fun one. Paris, you are my down-to-earth dude. You always keep it real with me, with Gary, with Barrett, and all of our incredible audience. What should we expect? Should I blow the roof off this thing, or should I slow it down a little bit?
I would slow it down and just look at past shows. Just look at even last year's show. Like, they're telling you in that this is catered towards that market and not us. And they're not going to do big major reveals that are targeted at just one specific region. So no, I wouldn't expect a lot. They'll probably just go over some of their services. There may be a smaller game or two that gets announced there, but I would not expect anything big to come out of Tokyo Game Show.
Okay, some highlights from last year, since I wanted to make sure everybody knew what they could expect, right? From last year with the Microsoft show, you had Game Pass and cloud gaming. Of course, you had the new gen console launch over there. They showed off Scarlet Nexus and Flight Sim with a world update for Japan. And then a couple ones for you to look at. They had Bright Memory Infinite, and from Capcom, they showed off Pragmata, which was pretty cool looking. I don't know if many people remember that one, but those are two games I'll circle and see if we get any updates on, because we have not had an update on Bright Memory Infinite in some time, and I thought we'd see more of that. So something to keep an eye on. Gary, you waking up at 2 a.m. on Thursday to watch this?
No, it's funny though. I have a very nostalgic association with TGS. When I was a rookie games journalist back in the UK, that was always the hottest ticket that games journalists in my company, whatever magazine they were working on, everybody, we could only afford to send like one or two people to TGS, but going all the way to Japan, and it was very exotic and exciting. And I never got to go, but it was always considered like the hottest ticket to go to TGS. And it was it was back in those days, in the 80s and 90s, a place where like big gaming stories and big announcements and big reveals would happen. I don't know if that has really been the case so much in recent years. And if we're talking specifically about Microsoft here, because we're an Xbox podcast, it just makes me kind of think about how historically, I wouldn't expect that much here, because Japan has always been a bit of a black hole for the Xbox, right? Like we all know the stories historically over the years about how every generation. I'm actually curious to know. We should get an update on how the Series S and X consoles have been doing in Japan. But I just remember the original Xbox, the 360, and the Xbox One all really struggled to even like move the needle in Japan. For whatever reason, the Japanese market has just never been that excited about the Xbox. It's Sony and Nintendo, the Japanese game companies, dominate the Japanese market, and Microsoft, and with the American Xbox console, for whatever reason, I don't know, the Japanese market has just never responded to it. And they've tried throwing money at Japanese developers. They've tried putting big JRPGs on that console. They've tried everything they can to kind of brute force their way into the Japanese market. It seems like it's never really happened, and I don't know if that's ever going to change.
Gary, I will work hard to find you an update for next week, and we'll talk about that Japanese market and see what the team is doing over there.
Fully expecting Perfect Dark update.
Whoa, okay. I like that from the initiative.
Mike,
That's
I'm
wild.
100% kidding. Don't expect anything.
I know you are, but you are saying that Xbox will get Persona 5, right?
Yes.
You're the
They'll
best.
finally get Persona 5. No, you fucking dorks. They're not getting Persona.
Let's keep.
What would change the equation, if we speculated on this many times in the past, if they get Kojima to come across That's the kind of thing that could actually make real. Then Japanese game audiences would have to wait. What? I got to buy an Xbox now to play Kojima-san's latest game. Like, you would have to go do it because he's one of those people that moves the needle. There's a handful of people like that in the world that could make you sit up and take notice like that. But he's one of them for sure.
I'm convinced if that does happen with Kojima, Jeff Keighley's going to get that at the Game Awards. He'll be the one announcing that.
Okay. That's a good one there, Paris. I like that guess. Let's keep it moving right now with another one. We have some possible new Xbox games, possibly leaked with some sweet code names. What you need to know on this story is over the week, there was a database leak over at Nvidia that released some possible code names and some other upcoming titles that you should keep an eye out that we already know about. But good friend of the show, Jez Corden from Windows Central Gaming, breaks it all down for us with the coolest code names and what to expect from them. Are they real? Are they not? Remember, these are leaks, so always take it with a grain of salt. These could just not ever materialize, or they could be announced sometime soon. Who knows? But some fun projects to look out for is Project Indus from Oxide Games. Reading right from Jez at Windows Central Gaming. You can check out his article on all the code names and this database leak. First, I heard about Indus back in spring 2021, although I was only able to confirm that the project is definitely going ahead thanks to the GeForce leak. Project Indus is a 4X strategy game being developed by Oxide Games, known for its work on real-time strategy RTS titles, Ashes of Singularity. Although Indus' unique hook remains to be seen, the gameplay sounds very familiar to what you experience in Civilization, with turn-based strategic elements alongside city building, empire advancement, espionage, diplomacy, warfare, and so on. The second one over there with a cool code name is Project Cobalt from In Exile Entertainment. Jez writes, as teased by In Exile Entertainment itself on Twitter, the Wasteland Studio is working on a new first-person shooter RPG, although details remain shrouded in mystery. What we do know is that it's codenamed Cobalt and believe it has steampunk style inspired by Industrial Revolution inspired tech. Expect steam engines, zeppelins, retro futuristic robots, dark Victorian era streets, and more. Paris, I'll kick it to you first because I really want to just go over to Gary. What do you think about this Nvidia leak? What did you see? We saw God of War on PC. We saw Gear 6. I mean, what did you break down from this? How much can I really take? Is this real? Is this fake? Do I need to put all my chips on Project Indus being real?
I've learned that while all this is great to see, and clearly Nvidia got this from somewhere, so I'm not saying these couldn't be real. I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing, right? That way, you don't build up expectations. You don't get let down if it happens. I mean, like the last one you're reading, the Cobalt one, steampunk era, Zeppelins and all that. That sounds super exciting. But what if that project never sees the light of day? You're setting yourself up for disappointment if you're expecting it to come out. So while a lot of it that I saw, it just makes sense, especially with the PlayStation stuff like God of War and all that, just makes sense that eventually that all that stuff is going to come to PC. I'll wait until we actually get a more official announcement before I get too excited, because as we've seen even during the previous generation, there's been projects that have been announced that never come out. Think about Scalebound, think about the last Fable project, things like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure at some point these were real things, but if they actually make it to market, we'll see.
Okay. Gary, I really wanted to hear your thoughts on this, but then I also wanted to pick your brain because you're a man that's done some incredible things in the industry and you've got to work on different projects. And I want to know, what are some of the coolest project code names you've ever heard or worked on before?
I remember many, many years ago, and I'm going back more than a decade now, when I was working on one of the many, many ultimately ill-fated attempts to do a live-action feature film adaptation of Akira. In Hollywood, we could, for a while, for the longest time, the official code name for that was the Petula Clark story, and I remember writing that on the title page of the script because we just kind of felt like if you see that sitting around, or if you see that like pop up in a list, it sounds like a real movie that Warner Brothers would make, but like no one's going to get excited, in the geek world about the biographical story of like a '60s singer that a lot of people probably have never, haven't heard of anymore. So we just tried to come up with like the most realistic sounding, but like unsexy, code name for a project that we could. We basically kind of invented a fake movie. The coolest one for me probably obviously is Rogue One. The code name on that was Los Alamos. And that came from the idea that John Knoll, who originally came up for the idea for the movie, was the whole idea of the scientist that helped build the Death Star, a weapon of mass destruction, was based on, in some ways, J. Robert Oppenheimer, who of course developed the first atomic bomb that was ultimately deployed in World War II, and those first bombs were the first test detonations took place in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and so that's where that came from. So it had some reference to Rogue One, but it was vague enough that without knowing what I just told you, no one was ever going to connect the dots back to, Lucasfilm's making a movie about the Death Star or whatever. It was just vague enough. But yeah, that was the code name, I believe, all the way through production.
Oh, I love asking you those type of stuff, Gary, because you always hit me with the coolest things. So love that. I was really happy to slide that story in and talk about it. But of course, go check out Jez's article over on Windows Central Gaming. He breaks it all down for you. He tells you what he knows about, what he doesn't know about, and you can go from there with those NVIDIA leaks. But with that, let's hear a word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Native. It's pop quiz time. What's the difference between deodorant and antiperspirant? Antiperspirants have aluminum in them, and that plugs your sweat glands to stop the sweat. That is bad and gross. Nuh-uh. Native deodorant is made without aluminum, parabens, or even sulfates. Nope. It's got ingredients you've heard of, like coconut oil and shea butter. Who doesn't love shea butter? Native deodorants keep you smelling and feeling fresh all day with scents like coconut vanilla, which is their most popular, and eucalyptus mint, which is one I'm a big fan of. G's been using that, and she smells really, really good. And they even have unscented and baking soda free if you have sensitivities. You are going to love Native as much as Gia has been loving it, and because she's been loving it, I have been loving it as well. Right now, you can save 20% on your first purchase. Go to nativedeo.com/KFgames or use promo code KFgames at checkout. That's nativedeo.com/KFgames or use promo code KFgames at checkout for 20% off your first purchase. nativedeo.com/KFgames. Next up, shout out to Chime. We've all spent money on dumb things at some point in our lives, some of us more than others. I'm not pointing any fingers, but one thing I hope I never have to give money to again is hidden fees in checking accounts. It's ridiculous. That's why the award-winning app and credit card Chime has no overdraft fees, foreign transaction fees, monthly fees, or transfer fees. That's a lot of fees that this doesn't have. Plus, Chime lets you send money to anyone, even if they're not on Chime. That's always a great feature to have. There's no fee for you and no cash out fees for them either. Best of both worlds. It's time to say goodbye to hidden fees. Join the millions of Americans already loving Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. You can get started today at chime.com/KFgames. That's chime.com/KFgames. CHIME.com/KFgames. Banking services provided by and debit card issued by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees apply except at MoneyPass ATM in a 7-Eleven location and at any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. Other fees such as third-party and cash deposit fees may apply. And finally, shout out to HelloFresh. It's fall, y'all, and that means things have gotten extra busy. Ain't it the truth? You don't have time for the grocery store, do you? I don't. Forget that nonsense and rely on HelloFresh. They send fresh, pre-measured ingredients and absolutely mouth-watering recipes right to you. You can skip the tedious parts and get right to the fun. Plus, they offer a lot of variety with 50 menu and market items every week, with everything from vegetarian meals for people like Paula Coelho to calorie-smart options for people hopefully like me, to extra fancy gourmet options for the one and only Kevin Coelho. HelloFresh has been awesome. So many people I know love it, including Joey Noel, Blessing Adeoye, Cool Greg, and hey, if Cool Greg says yes, why aren't you saying yes to HelloFresh? Go to HelloFresh.com/KFgames14 and use code KFgames14 for up to 14 free meals, including free shipping. That's up to 14 free meals free plus free shipping at HelloFresh.com/KFgames14. Use promo code KFgames14. HelloFresh.com. KF Games 14.
All right, guys, welcome back. We got a fun one here on the second half of the show. It was a light news week, which means we get to dive into the bag. We get to bring in a fun little side topic and get to know you section. And that's what I want this second half to be about, getting to know us here at the Kind of Funny Xcast. And then we also get the opportunity to ask the question out to our audience and get to know them as well. And so I'll tee it up like this. Over the past couple of weeks, really the past couple of months, myself and Barrett have been playing through the Metal Gear Solid franchise. And it's been a really, really eye-opening experience, a fun experience to share with friends. And something that stuck with me as we've played is Tam and Blessing, who are part of the Kind of Funny family, have joined us on all of this. And they've talked about how Metal Gear Solid was really something special to them that shaped them and really progressed them into the field that they are in now with video games media. And it got me thinking of like, what were the games that I grew up on? What were the games that pushed me into maybe this medium, into this field, and the things that I love that, you know, really made me who I am today? And I thought, man, that's a perfect question to ask my two gaming dads. And of course, our producer, Barrett Courtney, because it's our opportunity to get to know each other and share ourselves with the audience. So audience, sit back and relax because we're going to have a fun story time with Paris and Gary. And I'm really excited about that. So Gary, I'll kick it to you first, the storyteller himself. I want to know, what were the video games that made you and got you into this industry?
It's funny you should ask me that question this week because it actually ties into something that happened in the news this week. I don't know how much of an impact it made over here, but it was a big story in the UK. Sir Clive Sinclair passed away this week at the age of 81. And I don't know how many Americans even really know who that is, but he was really kind of the Steve Jobs and the Steve Wozniak of the British computer games and home computer market in the 1980s. He was both the genius engineer who built the products and engineered the products, and then was the very savvy marketer who went and kind of sold them and basically popularized home computing in the UK in the 1980s. First with the Sinclair ZX 80, then the ZX81, and then the big one that really broke through was called the ZX Spectrum. And the 48K model of this is how primitive it was. You had 48 kilobytes of RAM. That was the deluxe model. You could get a 16 kilobyte version or a 48 kilobyte version. And the reason why it was called the Spectrum is it came with color graphics. That was incredible back in the day. You could finally have color graphics on your television at home, and the graphics were terrible. And it was obviously by today's standards, is a joke, from a technological standpoint. But so what Sir Clive did was he made computers, and particularly home computers, affordable and accessible. The Apples and the Commodore and the IBM machines were out there, were all very, very expensive. He actually made them genuinely cheap and accessible to, almost any household that wanted to have a computer at home, made it very easy to get computers into the home, inspired a whole generation of computer enthusiasts, software programmers, and game developers, because you could program. Unlike game consoles, this thing had a keyboard. You could actually program on it in BASIC or assembly language or machine code, whatever you wanted to learn. And it inspired a whole wave of like the guys that went on to make Rare. One of the biggest developers in the world still to this day came out of the Sinclair Spectrum games market, making games like Attic Attack and Saberwolf and Night Law. And I'm gonna you talk about the games that made me. So many of them were these old Spectrum 48K games, and I'm gonna throw a bunch of names at you that I guarantee you've never heard, but they mean a lot to me. Manic Miner, Jet Set Willy, Chucky Egg, School Days, Daley Thompson's Decathlon, Horace Goes Skiing, Everyone's a Wally, Pajama Rama, Fat Worm Blows a Sparky, Underworld. There's so many kind of crazy games. I know, right? You think these names are so dumb I can't possibly be making them up, right? 3D Ant Attack, oh my god, Lunar Jetman, Tornado Low Level. I'm trying to remember some more. Lotus Turbo Esprit. There is Lords of Midnight. There are so many great ones. And you have to remember, back then in the day, that you had like this computer on your desk and it was like, oh my god, it's connected to my TV and I'm playing games and I can program it, I can do whatever. It was magical. We take it for granted now. We're walking around with these. This is a million times more powerful than the Spectrum was, and yet it's back then it didn't matter that this thing was about as powerful as a weak fart. Like that was amazing to us back then. Your color graphics. Oh my God, this thing's completely programmable. We loaded our games on little audio cassette tapes and they took forever to load. And when they finally loaded, they were mostly crap, but they were the greatest days of my life. And it's often really interesting to talk to Americans who grew up with a very different market. If they were on computers, they were probably on Apple, maybe a Commodore 64, but so many of the gaming memories that Americans have are more console based, whether it be Atari and television, Nintendo, Sega. I had some experience with some of those as well, but I grew up with the personal home computing boom of the 1980s with computers like the Sinclair Spectrum. And so I just want to give a shout out to Sir Clive Sinclair, who passed away this weekend, one of the true legends and fathers of the modern computing age. I honestly don't know if I would be where I am today if that Sinclair Spectrum and the games that came on it had not inspired my early love for computers and games.
Wow. Gary, that is an awesome story. And I really love hearing that. I do want to ask you, can you tell me about one of those games? I think one was called Spark Plug Blow Up Pajamas.
Oh, Fat Worm Blows a Sparky? Yeah, I don't remember the game very well. The name persisted because it was such a... I mean, a lot of these games back then had very silly names and they were very silly games, but this was a generation where, and again, we've kind of come back around to it now in the age of indie game development. But back in the day, it really was one person with a Sinclair Spectrum and a book on how to program the computer that could come up with the next big hit. It was literally one person doing all the graphics, all the sound, all the programming, all the game design themselves. Maybe two people, that would be considered a big team. But a lot of the people that came out of the 8-bit computer boom, who again went on to create some of the companies that are still very big players in the video game industry today. They all have many of them have their roots in that UK 80s computer boom, and the Sinclair Spectrum was a huge part of that. Huge computer for me. I don't know what life path I might have gone on had I never got a Spectrum for Christmas when I was, I don't know what it would have been, 10, 12 years old. And it got me down that road of like, oh my God, video games are so cool, and I want to do this. And it really did arguably set me on my path in life.
It's really awesome, Gary. Thanks for sharing, and I really can't wait to read the comments about all of that and see who identifies with that, because that was some stuff. You were just speaking a different language to me right there, which I love.
So you wouldn't understand a word of it.
Paris, I got to ask you, what were the video games that made you? What are the special ones?
So for me, like it's funny, Gary talks about the early 80s with the home PC boom at the time. It was the arcades for me. That's really what started for me in the early 80s. Like I think about Pac-Man, I think about Donkey Kong, Zaxxon, Q*bert, Dig Dug, kind of one of my early co-op experiences, Gauntlet, right? Zaxxon is another one I used to love to play as well. I could go on. But my thing was, and I don't know if I told the story on this show before in the past, but Saturdays used to be exciting for me because I would get $10 worth of quarters and I would go to the mall, hop on the city bus with my transfer to get there, and I would spend all day in Aladdin's Arcade at Tyrone Square Mall in St. Petersburg, Florida, and play all these games that I'm talking about right now. And that's what really got me cemented into gaming and loving gaming. I know I've told the story on other podcasts. My family, we went to the 1982 World's Fair in Knoxville, Tennessee, and they had a Pac-Man Expo there. And I'm doing air quotes. I was lost at the World's Fair because my parents couldn't find me, but really I wasn't lost because I was at the Pac-Man Expo, and I spent the entire time at the Pac-Man Expo playing that game because I just loved it so much at the time. But yeah, obviously the early 80s with the arcades, we know the arcades had their crash. NES was that Red Ryder BB gun moment for me, Christmas of 85 when I got the NES and I got Duck Hunt, Gyromite, and then eventually Super Mario Brothers. And that just went through the 8-bit era with all the NES games. Another game I think that just stands out to me, like I always say Super Mario Brothers 3 is probably my favorite game of all time. But the other one for me would be Ocarina of Time. Just that moment in time for me in 98 and everything that it meant to me that really pushed me into my love of games to where I am today, as far as wanting to go to E3 and be on podcasts and talk about video games very passionately and all that. And obviously we're coming up here on the 20-year anniversary of Xbox. E301, that was the year that I went, and I was there for Nintendo. I wasn't there for Xbox, but just knowing that moment kind of really just cemented, just how much I love games, and just it'll always be a part of everything I do. And obviously there's 10 million games since then I could talk about, but yeah, those early arcade days, that's what really sticks out to me, because there was just some fond memories, I'll never forget.
What were those quarter eaters that you played at the arcade that you just every time you were shoving them in there? What was the one you couldn't get away from?
There was a game, and I'm gonna screw up the name. Actually, I don't think so. I think it is called Frontline. There's a game called Frontline that I used to play, and is it Taito Taito? I think that was the name, Japanese company. Anyways, it was like a shooter, and you could get in tank, like you could get in tanks. Like there was like a little tank you could get in, there was a big one you could get in, and it was like a is it top-down scroller shooter? You're going from the bottom up to the top, and you'd have the enemies coming in, and you shoot them, and you could hop in the tanks and going around, and there it is. And I was just, that's it. And I'm just plugging in the quarters, man, all day at the arcade playing that, because you could keep playing it till they get to the point where you completely beat the game, and there's like a big giant tank at the end you have to take out and all that. That was one of those early games I remember. And like I mentioned before, like Defender, was another one I used to just love to play. And obviously, like I said, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Popeye was another one as well that I used to just love to go play and plop in those quarters. Now, this wasn't early 80s. This was more late 80s, I guess. But when that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game came out, that was another one to go play with your buddies, co-op game. You're just plugging in quarters. A Karate Champ was another one from Data East that I used to love to play. And then obviously, like I said, a little bit later on, the original Street Fighter came out, and then Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat. That just changed everything as far as just being in the arcades, you put your quarter up there to say that you're next and go in and all that. Oh man, I used to love it. And like I said, those experiences don't exist anymore. Like even that original Star Wars game, I forget what the graphics technology was called at the time. That was another one that was just transformative to me. Like I couldn't believe it. And you had the voiceover with Obi-Wan, use the Force, Luke, and you go in and to the Death Star and all that. Yeah, those are just some amazing times. And like I said, you don't have those experiences anymore, because while arcades kind of sort of exist still, I guess, it's more of, I don't want to call them gimmicks, but they're doing things like that Halo game that's in the arcade now. It's more of those type of experiences, and it isn't just because now those kind of games that we're playing in the early 80s in the arcade, just play them at home. Right? Which is why we literally do this show now. There's no reason to go to an arcade to play those kind of games anymore. So they have to do like these unique interactive experiences to get you to actually want to go in and spend your money.
Love that. So great, Paris. I hope that one day you, me, and Gary and Barrett can go to an arcade, and you can show us some of the classics if they still got them, or we'll play the new age gimmicky ones.
We'll go to, when all this garbage is over, we'll go to California Extreme.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I like that. Well, keep it going.
The classics.
It's a really fun progression because you get to see Gary to Paris, and then I'll go next, and then we'll kick it to Barrett, and you kind of see as the ages flow. And for me, it did start with the N64, right? And I'll never forget playing Gauntlet Legends with my mom, my dad, my little brother, and having that kind of like family time, being surrounded by that was really, really impactful to me. And seeing my mom smile and my dad be frustrated at holding an N64 controller at the time because he just hated the idea of video games was something I'll never forget. And bringing that to school and playing Rampage and Ken Griffey Jr.'s baseball, Super Smash Bros. With friends, that was like the start of it all. And I think that put me on that trajectory of gaming is meant to be social. Gaming is meant to be shared with your friends and others. And that's why I've always had such a big multiplayer past. And, as we go forward, I've always talked about Halo and Halo 2 and how impactful that was to me at 13 years old with my friends leaving middle school and going to AJ's house and having 2 different rooms filled with kids that were 13 and kids that were 17, his older brother's friends, and everybody screaming and playing together. And that brought this unity that I never thought I'd feel again, because the next year, which was really special, is we were all freshmen in high school and they were seniors in high school. And something that you'll never forget is knowing those upperclassmen and being able to smile and laugh with them,
Yeah.
even though sometimes they would tease you and beat you up a little bit. It was always fun to know that, like, man, I've made connections with those older kids that you might not get and share so many times before. And so Halo was when I really felt the connection of, man, I love playing games with my friends. This is something important to me and something I'll never forget. Another one I wrote down was Grand Theft Auto. I think Grand Theft Auto is one of those games in that series where you started to hear, oh, my friend's dad works at Nintendo. Oh, no, I know an uncle at Sony, right? Because Grand Theft Auto, when it came out, everybody talked about it. When we played Grand Theft Auto 3, everybody was talking about the shenanigans you would get into. And then when it moved into Vice City, the conversation in my circles were, well, what's next? What's going to happen? And that's when it was like, oh, my uncle works at Sony and you're going to be able to rollerblade. Or I heard you're going to be on a motorcycle. And it was really funny to where we are today, right? And we have these conversations of like, what is real? What's not real? Back then, it felt like, oh man, this is going to be the crazy experience of my life. I can't wait to see it. And at the time, man, if we looked up when that came out, I must have been 14 to 16 window. And I remember saving up all of my lunch money and being so excited for the launch of Grand Theft Auto Vice City that me and my friend Chris Merton stood outside of a Circuit City because we could not buy Grand Theft Auto Vice City because it was mature title and Circuit City was definitely carding people. And I begged people as they walked into Circuit City, will you please buy me this game? Old lady walked by. She said no. A gentleman walked by. He said no. And we just so happened to find this college kid going to buy Grand Theft Auto Vice City. And I begged him. I said, please, here is $65. Will you buy me this game? You can keep whatever's left. And he smiled and he goes, yeah, sure. And he could have taken my money and ran off and we wouldn't have been able to do anything. But that kid came out and handed us a bag with Grand Theft Auto Vice City. And I've never been happier in my entire life. Smiling, running home, playing that. My mom was like, where did you even get this? And I was like, don't ask questions. I'm playing Grand Theft Auto now. And that was one really special to me. And then the final one I want to talk about is what we've always talked about with sports games and mainly NCAA football. That was something that will always be special to me. And I love being able to connect with Paris on this. And it's like those games on the couch with my friends from Timmy Kuffner to Kyle Freskis to Joel Maloney and just screaming at each other, laughing, dying of just losing by a touchdown or winning and rubbing it in the other person's face. That couch co-op experience, that couch competitive experience was something that, you know, to this day I feel is truly lost with all of us being in our own homes and playing over the internet. It is really special to do that. But like being there in person and feeling that kind of aggression, that anger, that defeat, that happiness, that, you know, momentum was really something truly special to me. And, you know, when I look back on my past, it was always built around gaming with friends, being social through gaming, right? Talking about Donkey Kong 64 and figuring out that there was other Kongs that you could play as, talking about Grand Theft Auto and, oh, did you do this mission? Do you know about this road? Did you know that these girls would get in your car? And you're like, what? That's crazy. How could that ever happen? And then you go on and you just look forward and it's like, Halo 3 was the big one in senior year of all of my friends and I playing it. And we would try to go to parties on Friday nights and my friends would nonstop call me like, Mike, come pick us up. Let's go. And it's like, no, one more game, two more games. Okay. An hour later, I'll come and pick you up. And I will never forget those moments. And so those are the games that really propelled me to where I am today. And always making it a social aspect will always be something important to me. And I love those games looking back.
No, absolutely. You bring up sports because I meant to bring this up too. So two stick out in my mind. So back in the NES days, Tecmo Bowl was huge with me and my friends, and we used to on the weekends we would have tournaments where like we're writing it out, brackets, the whole thing, and anyone that remembers the original Tecmo Bowl, not Super Tecmo Bowl, like obviously the Bo Jackson stuff, but even like the bear, I think it was Cap Boso. I still remember this. He was like the tight end. There was like a glitch he could do where basically you couldn't stop him. He could catch the ball every time. And I think Mark Bavaro and the Giants had one. So we used to have rules on the glitches. Like, all right, you can't, if you pick this team, you can't run this play and throw it to this guy because, you know, it's into like all that stuff, right? But the one thing that sticks out to me is, again, and you appreciate this, Mike, Jordan against the Cavs when he hit the shot on Elo. That was during one of our Tecmo Bowl tournaments, right? And I remember we all stopped to watch that fourth quarter, and we're watching, and then we hear the shot, and I'll never forget because I fell on my head. We all got so excited. I jumped up and I fell and I hit my head. So it's just like a memory that will always stick to me because it was bringing us together, was that game. And, we're going over whoever's friend's house. Another one that sticks out to me is I'm actually in the Navy at this point, and we used to, during our downtime, always play Lakers versus Celtics. On the Genesis, and good. I think that was EA or whatever game it was, right? But again, that was the thing. Just we would all get together and cram into one room, and we're going back and forth and the trash talking and everything. And it's just like those kind of moments, like you were saying before, we kind of miss that in-person gaming that we used to have because we don't have that need anymore. And obviously during the pandemic, we really don't have it now, where we would all just get together and take turns and play games. And that's why it's even funny now with all the silly console war stuff. Look, we may have trash talk like, I think Nintendo's better, or you think Sega's better, or whatever. But at the end of the day, we're all poor. So it wasn't like we could have them all anyway. So it was like one would have one and one would have the other. And we literally would rotate everyone's house and go play all the games because that's what it was all about. That in-person experience during that console era, during the late 80s and early 90s, man. I'll never forget it. Like you said, those are like the defining moments that I will always fondly look back at and will remember. And it's like, I almost feel it's unfortunate that my kids won't have that same experience. I mean, clearly they'll have the online stuff. They can play with their friends that way, but that in-person kind of thing, like they missed. Like, ironically enough, my youngest daughter, she does have one of the neighbor friends. She'll come over and they'll sit on the couch and play games together. And I always smile when I see that because it's so rare. You just don't have that anymore.
It's funny, Paris, you should mention the console wars and how futile they are. And we talk about the tribalism and how pointless it all is, just like games. You don't need to pick a side and that kind of stuff. Although, again, I understand why people sometimes feel the need to do so. They, not everyone can afford to buy every console on the market. You pick one and you want to feel good about the purchase that you made, right? So you build this narrative that this is the good one, this is the cool one, my system is the best, it has the best games. But since we're talking about the games that made us and experiences we had playing games as kids, as we've all been doing, I remember that stuff being actually pretty mean on the playground back in the day. Like, if you were the kid that didn't have what was considered to be the cool console or the cool computer, kids could be really fucking mean. But I don't know if that was just at my school, but did you experience anything like that as well?
Oh, no, absolutely. Because it was funny. You mentioned in television earlier. I remember we used to make fun of the kids that had television.
Television would get you beat up. No danger. Yeah.
You're like, you got a television? That sucks. Oh man, no, those were great times back then. Because like and I know we're doing old man talk again, but you had your Atari 2600, you had the 5200, you had the ColecoVision, Commodore 64, you had the Atom that came out, then you had I don't know about in the UK, Gary, but like Radio Shack had the Tandy computer. So you had
the TRS-80.
Yeah. So you had the games that were on there. I had the Vectrex, things like that. Oh yeah, dude. It was, those were wild times back then.
It was kind of like a weird extension of like, if you didn't wear the cool sneakers that everyone else is wearing, you'd get beat up. And it was always this thing of like, oh yeah, you've got a ColecoVision, you must be the poor family or whatever. It's like, what the fuck? Yeah. I don't know if that continues to this day, like in schoolyards across the country, but I remember kids being vicious about that shit back in the day. Like, you were either in the cool club because you had the cool console or the cool computer, or you weren't.
Yeah, we'll trace the console wars back to Gary's school, just so everybody knows. That's where it all began.
That's where one kid got the shit kicked out of having an Intellivision, and the console wars began. It's like the start of 2001 when the ape figures out how to make a weapon out of a bone, and basically sparks like an entire history of like human violence. That was it. That was the kid, the poor kid that got the shit kicked out of him in 1983 at some school in northeast London, and that was the beginning of the console wars that we know today. Yeah, sorry.
Harris, you had one before we keep going?
No. I was just gonna say, just along everything that Gary's saying, it's hilarious. It's so true because we used to have all these stupid rules on things. I was talking about the Tecmo Bowl thing. Like, I even remember double dribble. Like, if you ever played double dribble, if you could go to down the baseline and you basically do like a corner three as you're going out of bounds. It would go in every time. You couldn't miss, right? So we would have a rule that you couldn't do that when you were playing. And I just remember literal fights would happen over that. You did the freaking thing, you're cheating, that whole thing. So man, it was a crazy time, but it have fond memories of it because while we might have, poked fun at each other and did all this stuff, like even Mike Tyson's Punch Out, I remember I could not get past Bald Bull to save my life. I just couldn't. And all my friends would make fun of me all the time. And I remember we would go over each other's houses. And I remember the first time I saw someone actually beat Mike Tyson. It's like these moments, with your friends, you can't replace them. They're priceless.
Priceless, that's right. And, I would be remiss if we don't get to talk with our good producer, the man behind the scenes who does it all, Barrett Courtney. And, over the past couple of weeks and months, Barrett has shined. He's come on. And he's always there to fill in the gaps. And I love Barrett to death. And he's part of this family. He's part of this team.
Absolutely.
And so I wanted to make sure we talked with Barrett as well. So, Barrett, I would love to know, what were the games that made you?
This is a weird, chaotic one because, of course, I jumped to the classics in my mind, right? Like Donkey Kong 64, timeless classic. The games that I played a lot in middle school, like Bully, Tony Hawk's Underground, Guitar Hero, Simpsons Hidden Run. But I had to think even further back because those weren't the games that got me even interested in games. The games that got me interested in games were the games that made me realize that, oh shit, this is a cool medium to tell stories. And that was back when I was being babysat when I was God, I must have been 4 or 5 years old, and my babysitters would play video games around me, and I would watch them play Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII, and Chrono Trigger really stuck with me. And I remember getting it must have been halfway through, or maybe 2/3 of the way through Chrono Trigger, where a major thing happens to the main character, and I remember watching that and being whoa, that can happen in a video game. So it was really those with my those experiences with my babysitters. I remember as a really young kid, that kind of had me start off, and then I was more of a casual gamer for a lot of my life until 2009. And the second kind of phase of the games that made me came about. Batman Arkham Asylum came out, and I was already a big comic book nerd and a Batman fan, and I was oh, I got to try this out. It's not it's not a weird tie-in to a movie that won't make sense for a video game. It's just its own thing. And Arkham Asylum kind of opened my eyes to oh man, game design is cool as hell, and how this is all kind of intricately woven into everything you're doing with the Metroidvania inspirations that it had. And then around that same time, I had just moved to San Francisco. I was just starting high school, and I'd made a lot of friends who were also into video games, and so because of them, I got into Portal and Super Meat Boy, and eventually I borrowed my friend's copy of Red Dead Redemption, which kind of circles back to why I fell in love with Chrono Trigger at such a young age of man, this is what you can tell and do with stories in video games. And this kind of same thing that happens at the very end of Red Dead Redemption, where the end of that game, I was oh man, I forgot how cool stories can be in video games, and the kind of special kind of area of the medium that they have to be able to tell very unique stories in video games. So it's I'm kind of all over the place with that, but I just remember Batman Arkham Asylum got me back into video games, and then from there it was just a whole slew of games that I was oh my gosh, I'd forgotten what makes video games so cool. And I just remember that that ending for Red Dead 1, I was holy crap, I forgot that stories could be dope as hell and very unique in this medium. So yeah, I'm a weird, unique one because I was a very casual gamer kid, not playing the games that people that were critically acclaimed when I was growing up. I was playing I was playing games that were based off of IP that I knew, or based off of things I was into, like skateboarding and Guitar Hero. I grew up as a drummer and stuff, so I ate up all the music stuff like Rock Band and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm a weird case, but yeah. There you go. Those are some of the games that made me.
I love that, Barrett. I love that because it's so fun to be around you and the team here at the Xcast, and kind of funny in the gaming world as a whole, because everybody's so unique. Everybody identifies with such different things, but we also all kind of have ties to it, and we all have similarities, and we all can come together and bond off of that. You bring up Red Dead, and the first time I ever played Red Dead, Barrett, I didn't remember the fast travel system, so I actually rode the horse across the map the entire experience. I never fast traveled once. And by the end of it, I was like, I will never play Red Dead again because that sucked with how much horse riding I did. But it was so much fun. And hey, bring up Guitar Hero. What a special time that was. Of like, that was a very unique and special game that you could share with friends or play alone. And I will never forget the memories of that plastic guitar and all of the shredding we did on that thing. So much fun. So with that, we got to share some fun, sentimental moments. We got to talk about the games that made us. But audience, best friends out there, you make this show possible, and you make us all so happy and support us in so many ways. I want to hear from you in the YouTube comments, or you can leave a review over on your favorite podcast service. Let me know the games that made you. What are those games that are special to you, that made you into the person that you are today, that you cherish show so much? Let us know so we can get you involved in the conversation. Let's get out of here. Enjoy the weekend. A quick heads up for all of you, as I like to tell you, here's your free play weekend games: Hunt Showdown, Judgment, and Blood Bowl 2 Legendary Edition. I know me and my friends are definitely going to check out some Hunt Showdown, which is a great multiplayer game. And then finally, if you're looking for something to watch and you got that YouTube craving, please go over to youtube.com/thehooligans right now, because the Hoonigans, aka Ken Block's Car Garage team, are making a real life-size replica drivable Warthog. You probably saw it over with the promotional images of Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, but this team is the team that actually created that. And let me tell you what, it's super badass, y'all. The YouTube series is a fun mini series, about 15 minutes for each episode. They're dropping on the daily. 2 are out right now, but it's fully off-road, 4-wheel steering, and it's going to go up to 100 miles per hour. So really, really cool to see how this team creates it from the design phase all the way up to real life. So make sure to check that out over on the YouTube, the Hoonigans. That's HOONIGANS if you're looking for it. Other than that, it's time to get out of here. Paris, Gary, Barrett, that was a lot of fun. A great show today. A little light on the news, but a fun time talking video games and Xbox with all of you. So thank you to everybody out there watching. Have a wonderful weekend. Be good to one another. Be safe. Play a bunch of video games. Peace, y'all.